Hey guys, welcome back to Anatomy. Today we're going to actually dive into the cardiovascular system now that we're familiar with blood itself. So this is our circulatory system and we'll get into details on it in a second. But first I want to show you all the materials that you'll need for today. So as we are doing our notes, you guys can follow along as I go through the slides. You should probably split screen between the video that you're watching and then the note sheet. Now, when we get halfway through the notes, you guys are going to pause the video and go to this website right here. This website is for you to explore the different parts of the heart. To navigate it, just let it load for a second because it might not pop up automatically. And then you're just going to click the next button, familiarize yourself with the different parts. See here, it lets you look at the different valves. Remember, you have 4 of those. And then once you've become familiar, you can quiz yourself on the different parts. So if we go here, it's going to have you click on the different parts. So if we want to click the right atrium, it's right here. Remember, with the heart, we're looking at it from the front, so the right and left are reversed. It's like if you're on stage, if you've ever done theater. So we clicked on the right atrium, and then we would just hit next. Click on the left atrium. I'm going to click the wrong one to show you what happens. It just says try again, and then you can try again. You can do this as many times as you'd like to familiarize yourself with the different parts of the heart, and then you'll come back to the notes so that we can quiz ourselves over it. Your classwork assignment for today is to label the circulatory system. So the worksheet looks like this. The letters go with number 1. The numbers go with number 2. And don't worry about the coloring. I'll remove that before I upload the sheet. So let's go ahead and get into the work. Today is all about the circulatory system. And to get us started, I wanted to let you watch this video that kind of intros it for you from National Geographic.
The heart pumps blood throughout the body, carrying oxygen and nutrients to every cell. It's this circulation of blood that is vital to sustaining life. The heart is an organ made up of several tough layers of muscle. The pericardium is the thin layer that covers the exterior, while the endocardium lines the inside walls. The heart is divided into 4 chambers, 2 upper and 2 lower. The upper chambers, known as the atrium, receive blood coming into the heart. The lower chambers are the ventricles that pump blood out. Between each chamber are valves that open and close and help keep the blood moving. They are the tricuspid, mitral, pulmonary, and aortic valves. A pumping cycle starts when oxygen-depleted blood returns to the heart after circulating throughout the body. The blood enters through the right atrium before flowing to the right ventricle. It's then pumped to the lungs via the pulmonary arteries. There, blood is rejuvenated by air that's breathed in. The oxygen-rich blood returns to the heart through the left atrium, where it goes to the left ventricle. Then, by way of the aorta artery, the fresh blood is pumped throughout the body before the process repeats itself. That process happens with every heartbeat, and it's relentless. The heart beats 100,000 times a day, 40 million times a year, and up to 3 billion times over an average lifespan. But there are conditions that can disrupt a heartbeat and that normality. They can range from myocardial infarction or a heart attack to heart disease and hypertension. In contrast, exercise and emotional excitement can also have an impact on a person's heartbeat. The various blood vessels that comprise the circulatory system are a network of veins, arteries, and capillaries that span over 60,000 miles throughout the body, and the heart is the pump at the center of it.
So that video just gives you a good intro to the heart. Today we're focusing specifically on the heart, and we'll look at other parts of the system later. Now, when we're talking about the heart, there are 2 types of circulation occurring. The first is systemic circulation. This is the one that delivers blood to all of your body cells and carries away waste from those cells. The second type is the pulmonary circulation. Remember, when we see this word pulmonary, it's referencing the lungs. So this is how carbon dioxide is eliminated in our blood and how we add more oxygen to the blood through that lung pathway. So this over here on the right shows you both of those processes. The pulmonary circulation follows this path, whereas the systemic circulation follows this one. Now, when we're talking about the heart, we need to know about its structure, because remember, when we're in anatomy and physiology, we're looking at both structure and function. The heart is about 14 centimeters by 9 centimeters, which is the size of a person's fist. It's located in the mediastinum right here, between your second rib and your fifth intercostal space. And the distal end, remember distal means the part furthest away from the center, right here, is called the apex. Sorry, the text cut off there. So this guy right here is the apex. Now, when we're talking about the circulatory system, we've got arteries and veins. Remember, arteries carry blood away from the heart, so A for away, veins carry it to. Here's some of your major arteries. You have your coronary artery on the right here. It looks like it's on the left, but that's because we're facing the heart. So when we're talking about the parts of the heart, they're going to be reversed. Your left main coronary artery right here, the circumflex right here, and then the anterior descending coronary artery. The heart, because it's such an important organ, has a couple of different parts for protection. So we have something called a fibrous pericardium, and it's exactly what it says. Fiber that is around this prefix para, the heart. So it encloses the heart and kind of acts like a bag to protect it, and it has two layers. In the pericardium, you have the visceral pericardium, that's the part on the inside, and then the parietal, which is on the out, and both of those act to protect the heart. You also have the pericardial cavity, which contains fluid and reduces friction between the heart and its surrounding organs. So if we look at the heart on a molecular level, if we were to look at it under a microscope, we have a couple of different parts. You have the epicardium. Remember, the prefix epi means upon, so it's generally the outside layer, and its job is to reduce that friction between the heart and the pericardium. We have the myocardium. This is the middle layer. The prefix myo means muscle, so this is where most of the heart muscle or cardiac muscle is located. And then you have the endocardium. That's the thin lining on the inside, right here, within the different chambers. So when we're talking about blood flow in the heart, remember we've got two different parts to this system. So your heart is a double pump. That means that there are two different loops through which the blood circulates in order to reach all of the body and be oxygenated fully. Remember, the pulmonary system is when the blood travels to the lungs and back. The purpose of this is to expel waste in the form of carbon dioxide and to oxygenate that blood for use throughout the body. And then you have your systemic system, where the blood travels back through the body and then to the heart again to be reoxygenated. When we're looking at the heart, it has 4 different chambers. So the different chambers are split up into 2 types, the atria and the ventricles. The atria are the thin chambers at the top that receive the blood returning to the heart through the veins. So the atria, the right atrium and the left atrium, take the blood from the body that has returned to the heart. Then you have your ventricles. These are thicker muscular areas, and these ones pump the blood out of the heart and through the body or through the lungs. So you have your right atria or your right ventricle and your left ventricle here. This part here in the center that separates the right and left sides of the heart is referred to as the septum. So the way that I remember that, if you remember, like a lot of girls at school have a septum piercing, it's right here through the middle of the nose that separates the 2 nostrils. The same here is true, where the septum separates the two sides of the heart. Here's an image of what that heart looks like. Sorry, I didn't mean to blow myself up like that. So you have blood coming in through the veins. The superior vena cava is the largest vein. It's going to take in all of that blood, circulate it up here into the ventricle, where it's then sent to the lungs. So when we're looking at the heart, we have to regulate which way the blood is flowing in order for it to follow that double loop system. The way that we do that is through different valves that open and close to move blood through the heart. So you have two atrioventricular valves and two semilunar valves. The left atrioventricular valve is called the bicuspid valve or the mitral valve. So this guy over here. The one on the right is called the tricuspid valve. The way that you can remember is if you're looking at a cross section like this, bi means two, and the bicuspid or mitral valve splits it into two parts. The tricuspid valve has three different branches on it. Tri means three, so that's an easy way for us to remember that. Then we have the aortic semilunar, also called the aortic valve, so they just leave this part off. This is between the left ventricle and the aorta. So if we look at our image over here, we can see the aortic semilunar valve right there. And then the pulmonary semilunar, or just pulmonary valve, is between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. So the pulmonary artery is right here. The pulmonary semilunar is right here. They're referred to as semilunar because they have kind of a half moon shape, which is an easy way for you to remember those as well. This is just to show you those again. So we've got the mitral or the bicuspid, which is located on the right here, or the left side of the heart, because remember we're looking from the front. And the tricuspid over here, located on the right side. The aortic and pulmonary are both semilunar valves, these two right here. So they have that half moon kind of shape to it. Now, when we're talking about these parts, right, the cusps, which are the different flaps of the bicuspid and tricuspid, are attached to the ventricle walls by these different fibrous cords. The name for those cords are the chordae tendineae, which attach to the wall through papillary muscles. So what this does is it keeps the valves from being pushed up into the atria and whenever they are expanding. So later, when you guys get some practice, you'll be able to identify these parts more. But remember, right now we've discussed the four chambers and the different valves present. So remember, the septum is this wall that divides the left and right side of the heart, right here. And if there is a defect, sometimes called a hole in the heart, we refer to it as a ventricular or atrial septal defect. If there's a hole, then the blood doesn't flow where it needs to, and that can cause a lot of health issues. Now, before we move into the next part of the slides, go ahead and pause this video. You guys are going to move over here and follow that tutorial that we discussed at the beginning. Once you feel confident that you know the different parts, come back and we'll do a quick review of that. All right, so hopefully you paused long enough to get a good look at that tutorial. If not, pause again and go back because I want to make sure you guys know these different structures. Now, to get us started, go ahead and pause my video, and I want you to try to label these parts on the heart right here. When you come back, we'll review the answers. So go ahead and pause. Okay, now let's go through it. So this part right here is the aorta. The pulmonary trunk is located here. And remember, if you're not getting these, that's okay. This is just practice. But that does mean you need to review. So you can go back to the site attached, or you can just look up parts of the heart online and read through those. The pulmonary vein is right here. The left atrium is located right here. Then we've got our coronary vessels. Remember, you can tell that these are vessels because of the shape. The left ventricle. And then the apex, remember, is that distal end that we discussed towards the beginning. Our next part is the superior vena cava. That's the large vein. The right atrium, the right ventricle, and then the inferior vena cava. Here are all those parts. Again, if you want to just pause the video and check out those different pieces. I like this because it also illustrates how the blood flows through those different parts. All right, so now go ahead and try labeling these ones. Try to label the valves if you can as well. Remember, we discussed those earlier in the video. You can pause and go back, or they discussed them on the site that you were just on. But pause your video and come back when you're ready to see the answers. All right, so here are our different parts again. Remember, left and right are switched because we're looking at the heart from the front. So the right atrium is right here. The right ventricle is here. The left atrium and the left ventricle. For number 5, we've got the pulmonary artery. 6 is that aorta. 7 is the superior vena cava. 8 is the inferior vena cava. And 9 is your pulmonary vein. Remember, I did ask you to try to label the different valves. If you did that on your last one, that's good. We're going to go over the answers in a second. If you didn't, go ahead and try to label numbers 1 through 5. 1 through 4 are valves. Number 5 is not. So I'll pause right here and then come back when you're ready for the answer. Okay. So here are our answers. Number 1 right here is your pulmonary valve. Number 2 is the tricuspid. 3 is the mitral or bicuspid valve. 4 is your aortic valve. And then 5, remember, the distal point is the apex of the heart. That is the end of our slides. So all you need to do now is complete your labeling for your homework. You'll upload this labeling sheet along with your notes for this first part of the unit. Remember, you can pop into office hours if you have questions or if you want help. That's from 2:45 to 3:45 p.m. I'm also available from 9 to 11 a.m. if you want to leave a comment on Classroom, text me, call me, or email me. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys next class.